Welcome to the house. What a pleasure.
Thank you, man.
Nice
Good to see you.
How are things?
Wonderful.
It's been a minute since you made a record under this moniker, and I've heard you say you didn't feel the need to express yourself up until now this way. Is that true?
Yeah, it's weird. I got the bug a couple of years ago, but it wasn't because I particularly needed to record. It was actually because I wanted to deliver a thank you note in a way. I had been thinking about it because I had just played with Prince, and he's given me some of the greatest moments of my life, and then it made me reflect on people like Bowie, Bernard, Prince, Luther Vandross, people who my life was one way before I met them and another way after I met them, right? And that was a cool thing because to me, records are the same as films. Every time I make a record, I'm actually making a holistic story about the way I see the world, whether it's the world as it is now or at some period in time. So I was looking at this period of time that was from the time I started recording until now. It was a pretty good subject. And then Bowie passed away suddenly. And what was weird about that was that everybody who was working with him were all my friends. I would see them every day, but I guess they were under NDAs not to talk about it. And they were good. No one let me know anything. I was on the train with Sterling Campbell, and he didn't say a word. And we're riding on the subway, and next thing I know, a couple weeks later, David dies. And David and I had ongoing conversations because every time Chic plays in New York, we have an open invitation to him to come and do Let's Dance with us.
Right.
Because we say, and I say this in the most respectful, humble way, nobody plays Let's Dance like Chic because we played it in the first place.
Right, it's your track. You made it with him.
So when we play it, it's going to sound better than when you play it. And he always took that with a grain of salt. And I always felt he was just on the edge of saying yes.
Oh, wow.
Always, because he never got back to me like instantly. It was always like contemplation. Damn, wouldn't that sound dope if I'm with Nile and those guys playing it? But
And so you have these incredible experiences. You know all these friends, and so your thank you was to the fans. Was it a thank you to the song?
No, it's a thank you to the people because the fans are something that happens randomly. We never know who's going to like anything. It was the people who actually changed my life. Of course, the fans change your life because they validate the recordings, they validate the work. But it was the people. It was Bowie, Avicii, Chris Cornell, Prince, especially Bowie and Prince. I had a song on the album called Prince Said It, and we laughed about it because every time Prince and I would sit down, Prince loved to hear me play jazz. Same with Bowie, loved to hear me play jazz. And Prince said, Nile, why don't you do a jazz record, man? That would be so great. And sometimes artists don't realize that I don't necessarily need to do records to feel good about the art form. I just like playing. Records are something that I look upon in a very unique way. A record is like a film to me. It's documenting something that I'm going to work on and get it right and fix every little thing. And you know what I mean? It's a different art form. Whereas normally I just like playing.
Well, in fact, and not to be overly Buddhist about it, but the record is kind of irrelevant because it is the document, but all the time you spent, that's being present. That was being in the moment.
So the record is, in fact, the composition, right? Yeah. So that's a fact. The record is the composition.
Right.
However, just like with famous, let's just call them standards, be they classical or jazz or even pop. I mean, look at what Devo did to Satisfaction. It didn't sound anything like the Rolling Stones Satisfaction, but it was still Satisfaction.
It was so paying good.
And it's killer.
Yeah.
So, you respect the composition. So the compositional aspect of it is important, and to document it is important if you believe in that art form. So I do. Obviously, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
Right, yeah.
But I don't necessarily have this need, this undying need to go out and do more and more and more of that documentation portion, because I love playing. I just love jamming and playing and doing songs and paying respect to the composition on that level. So anyway, long story short, I decided, okay, now was the time. Enough time had gone by. Let me make a record. So I did this big tribute to Bowie because I had been inspired by finding the tapes, the lost Bowie demos. Yeah. I never knew, man, that I recorded Let's Dance basically in 2 days.
Wow.
I always thought it was 17 days. Yes, the finished product was 17 days, but all the rhythm tracks were cut in 2 days. I did that in demo form in Switzerland, and I did that at the power station when we made the real record. But I just didn't remember it. I was so drunk and partied out of my mind. It just was my work. And then when the family sent me the original demos, I was sitting there shocked. My mouth was like agape, and I was like, I did this in 2 days?
So were you in a studio? Were you at home? How did you first put that down? And what did you feel before you played that? Because, your friend had passed, and this is a real moment in time.
Frankly, I was shocked because now I did have heads up.
Yeah.
Because we played Montreux Jazz Festival many, many times. And of course, a lot of people don't know, but we recorded the original demos at Queen's studio, Mountain in Switzerland. So the engineer, one day, Chic, we were playing at the jazz festival, and this guy was doing a film on me, a documentary, and he says, my best friend is the guy who recorded the demos for Let's Dance. And I said, wow, really? I'd love to get a copy of those because somebody came and stole them from my apartment one day. He said, oh, no problem. He calls the guy up, and the guy says, oh, Nile, I'll send the demos over to you. He passed away before he could send the demos to me. But in the course of the conversation, he said, you did the entire album. I said, what are you talking about? I thought that I just flew over to Switzerland and Let's Dance was my audition, basically, right? Because David and I never recorded any music in New York until we did the record.
Right.
I only remember doing Let's Dance. And the reason why that was so dramatic to me was because David walked into my bedroom one morning and went, nah, darling, I think this is a hit. And he proceeds to play a folk song. And I'm sitting in bed going, oh my God. David charged me with doing an album that's a hit. And now he's in the room going, ding, 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 ding. Let's dance dun, dun, to the song we're playing on the radio. I'm going, uh-oh. So I thought he was testing me to see if I was some kind of sycophant who was just going to go, oh, wow, David, that's the greatest thing I ever heard. But instead, I got on the phone and called his manager and said, is David the kind of guy who would play tricks on me? Because for the last 2 months, we've been going around listening to records, and he's been telling me that he wants a hit. He wants a hit. And what he played for me is anything but. It's not that it's bad, but it's not a hit.
Right.
And she says, no, he's not that kind of guy. He would never do that to you now. He believes in you. So if he said to you he thinks it's a hit, he thinks it's a hit. So then I put on my producer's hat and I just said, hey, David, can I do an arrangement? Now, you have to know Bowie to understand that he understood the terminology of jazz musicians and stuff like that. So to an arrangement to Bowie is an important thing. He's hearing horns and strings and the whole bit. And he's like going, yeah, now go ahead. He had no idea I was going to change the original song and change the rhythm section as well.
Right. So are all these things popping in your head then when you sit down to do this record? Like you said you had thought of all these people and the impact they had on you and the impact, of course, on your musical career. When you're sitting down, are you thinking of them all? Are you sending them little messages? Is it that kind of holistic experience?
It's actually very much that. It's really almost like a love letter.
Yeah.
It's really like a love letter, but it also has to be sort of double entendre. But this was the first time I was going to do a self-indulgent record.
Right.
Like I never do self-indulgent records, but this time I felt, you know what? I've just survived cancer. I'm just going to tell people straight ahead how I feel.
Yeah.
This is how I feel about David. This is how I feel about Prince. This is how I feel about Avicii. This is how I feel about Chris Cornell. We hang around all the time. And then 4 of these people pass away, and in no particular order. It's like Chris Cornell and I never made any music together. All we would do is go out and be bros, just like go to dinner and talk about stuff. And he would just talk about how much he, I don't want to use the wrong word, but just how much he respected my sobriety because, you know, I had a long time. I've just celebrated 24 years.
Happy
and
birthday.
believe me, bro, I started getting high at 11 years old and was doing it damn near every day.
Didn't you almost die one night, like 8 times at Robert Downey
I
Jr.?
did die. No, not almost die. I did die. They brought me back.
8 times?
8 times,
Oh, you are blessed to get through that.
Yeah. The way I found out about that was the attending physician, I guess he was doing a long shift, and they always do long shifts, and he told me the next day how hard they worked to save my life. And he also showed me the partially filled out death certificate.
What?
Because he says that after all they did, my heart wouldn't. That was just it. So he says they called it at a certain time. You could see they wrote down the time. They were writing down the death certificate. And the orderly said, "Hey, Doc, we got a live one over here." And he says, "Your heart just started going again after we did everything we could possibly do."
Did that have an impact on you when you heard that back?
For 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks, yeah. That's it. What was the moment? I want to go back to about Chris because I know I've been lucky enough to spend some time with Chris over the years, and he worked really hard at sobriety. He worked hard at it. Why did you suddenly figure, or how did it happen where you got to be okay, where you got through it?
The totally true story is that I was just embarrassed.
Yeah.
I didn't lose all my money. I was just embarrassed. I never had a DUI, anything of the sort. I went to Madonna's birthday party, and I had what I considered the dream date of my life, because I've never been very confident with women, and I, always attracted to these powerful, cool women because I grew up during the women's movement.
Yeah.
We're radicals and stuff. So like all these powerful women would come in and like blow me away. It's like, wow. So I'm out on this date with Teresa Rando, who I had just done a film with. I had done Beverly Hills Cop 3, and she was now in Miami Beach filming Bad Boys with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. And I happened to run into her, and I said, "Man, we never met on set, but blah, blah, blah." And she says, "God, you're the nicest guy I ever met." I was so flattered. I'm like, "Oh, man, you're the most beautiful woman I ever met." Anyway, long story short, that romance lasted all of about 2 hours. Wow. I took her to Madonna's house. By the time I got to Mo's house, I was like lit. I had like 6 bottles of sake and blah, blah, blah. God knows how much blow. And I was out of control. And, but that wasn't the thing that embarrassed me. What embarrassed me, of course, I felt guilty about it because it's just not my personality to do something to hurt anyone. But what embarrassed me is that I was down in Miami Beach recording a Cuban genius named Nil Lara. This guy is a musical genius. He's on the level of, Charlie Palmieri, McCoy Tyner. He's a monster. So I'm down there, and he asked me to come and jam with him at a nightclub. Now, normally I'm not big on jamming, unless it's somebody like a Prince or somebody like a Les Paul, or because I want to play jazz. I don't want to just go out and play the blues. I mean, it's like everybody can do that. Like, come on. I did that when I was 15 years old.
You want to push yourself.
Yeah, man. So I want to, like, right. So, like, if Herbie Hancock asked me to jam, I'll jam. Yeah. John McLaughlin, I'll jam, because I want them, So anyway, long story short, I go out to jam with Neil Lara, and because it's an all Latino audience, I decided, I'm going to do something that they probably don't see. So I started doing Hendrix tricks. I started playing behind my back, playing with my teeth, all of this stupid stuff that I haven't done since I was like 17 years old.
Right.
And the crowd was freaking out. They were like bugging out. And Neil Lara is a serious musician, like killing it. And I'm like going, boom, 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 super boom, 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 gong, 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 gong. You got a Puerto Rico, whatever. And the crowd is going bananas. The next day I go to Neil's house and he says, hey, man, you want to hear what you played last night? And I said, sure. And I didn't know that Neil was the most anal retentive musician that's ever walked this earth. He records everything he does.
Okay.
He played it for me. And he says, wow, I bet you thought you were killing it, huh?
What?
And I went, yeah, wow, that's what I played. He said, yeah. And I realized that I was, the only word I could use was insane, because the crowd's reaction was like incredible. The Aural reaction that I had listening to the music was like, this is what I actually was doing. So it was just the tricks that they were responding to, and maybe some of the musical motifs were clever, but they weren't executed well. Right. That was so embarrassing. All I did was think of all of the teachers that I had prior to that, all of the people that had helped me get. Now, I'm very... it's like the new album. I've never been able to do this alone. People think that I take credit for stuff, and it's the only reason why it sounds like I'm doing that, because the person is not in the room. Mm-hmm. I've learned as a writer. I mean, I'm a writer. I'm an author. If they're not there, you can't tell their story. You sound silly. You gotta have a beginning, a middle, and end. And if you introduce a character, well, that character's got to have they have to have an arc. So when I say I don't mean that I'm the only one who did. I just mean I'm the only one in the room talking.
That's right. Yeah. You're the one authorized to tell the story because you're here,
right,
on the mic. Yeah,
right. And so a person should just presuppose that of course I'm talking about Bernard. Of course I'm talking about Bowie. Of course I'm talking about Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Right.
But
now, if Stevie Ray Vaughan asked you to jam the blues back then, you would. That's a yes.
Oh, that's a whole different thing.
That's a whole other yes.
Yeah, because we're gonna go off. I mean, yeah. So no, it's any musician who's a virtuoso, like Chris Cornell. You said, I mean, he's the kind of guy. We never played together, but all he had to do is say, man, take this guitar. Poof, we're in it.
Right.
There's a video on that's making the rounds right now of Steve Vai, he and I doing Halo. Now, we had already played the first and second violin part, so that was already on tape. So we knew we had the essence of the song. But what you see on the video is me coaching Steve Vai and talking into his ear and saying, look, we got to make this something special. Halo is what it is, but we got to take it to another level. We got to do Halo 2. And it's just like crazy. And we're just going off and playing this crazy, like insane stuff, and stuff I've done with Dweezil Zappa, which people don't really hear me shred, because that's not what I do.
No.
I mean, I do it, but that's not what I do.
Well, this is it, right? This idea that to be as good as you are at what people know you for, you have to be able to do a lot of other things.
Right.
Right? So if you were to really understand music and really want to be the guy that could say no to Aretha Franklin, or even not even take up Miles Davis on an offer.
Right.
Which to me sounds crazy,
I thought I was, so that story. Miles used to always say to me, so he and I did a fashion show for Issey Miyake, and Issey gave me a one-of-a-kind coat that he thought he was going to produce, but when he looked at the price tag, he realized that he couldn't do it. It was a fabric that he invented, and it was a faux fur coat. It looked like a seal coat. Like if you saw me walking down the street, you say, Jesus Christ, this guy's walking around with a seal coat. But then when you get up close, you see that it's this beautiful fiber that Issei probably worked on for years.
Right.
And it just cost a fortune to make. So it's only one, and I have it. So Miles used to always say, nah, I need that motherfucking coat, man. You gotta give me that coat. That's crazy. And then he would always say, right after that, also, brother, I want you to make me a motherfucking Good Times. And I would say, you're Miles Davis. You want me to write Good Times for you? He says, yeah, man, I'm serious. I want you to write me a motherfucking Good Times. And I would like feel like I had heard so many negative stories about Miles making fun of people and stuff like that. And I didn't want to be the butt of a Miles Davis joke. So I would write these songs that were like these jazz fusion songs. And he would go, man, I can do that bullshit. Marcus can do that bullshit. Talking about Marcus Miller.
Yeah.
I was like, no, but, you're Miles, I'm trying to stretch the boundaries of fusion. Man, I can stretch the boundaries of fusion.
I want a theme song hit.
He wants to be on pop radio. Right. The same thing Bowie wanted. So anyway, man, I know I'm being really long-winded.
No, I like it. This is about, an artist telling the stories. I like that.
So the thing is that these are all people that really help me. And in my world, people think that I'm I don't know what the hell they think. They just think I'm some dude sitting in a room by myself and coming up with this stuff. But in fact, yeah, I start out that way, but it's a collaborative effort.
Right.
And I just thought it was time to say thank you. I don't really have a chance to say thank you on records.
Did the health scare put you in the spot too?
Maybe.
I mean, you battled a long time.
I try, I've had 2 bouts of cancer, and as I was leaving to come over here and see you, I just heard about, God, I don't want to say the wrong person's name, but she's just now suffering. She's been diagnosed with her 3rd bout of cancer.
Breast cancer, right?
And the one thing I've heard is that once cancer comes after you, it's always in pursuit. It's rapacious, man. It's coming. So now I've had 2 bouts. As a matter of fact, my last concert that was supposed to be in Toronto was canceled because I was in the hospital with cancer.
Right. I mean, you documented it, like living up the planet C. You shared it. You embraced the story. You let people in.
Yeah. Well, it was important to me, and it becomes even more important to me now. I'm going to give you a good story. I know we're all over the map here, bro. I'm going to give you a good story. About 2 weeks ago, this kid named Alex walked up on stage with Chic looking 100%. Only a few months before that, I saw him, and if Alex, you hear this, bro, I'm not telling you, look like you were on your deathbed, man. He was blind in one eye. I believe that he had a tumor or something, a blood vessel that may have been similar to what John McCain was having behind his eye. So when I walked in, this kid he only had one eye. He looked horrible. 2 weeks ago, he's on stage with Chic. You can go on YouTube and see it, man. He looks fantastic. His girlfriend is there with him. His mom is there. I got every single person at the concert that we did, must have been about 40, 50,000 people to shout out Alex, and they were all shouting him out. I said, yeah. I got off the plane, and I went to the hospital, and I saw my man Alex, and I want everybody, man, to just shout out Alex. And his boys were right in the front. And they said that we never felt so inspirational. And sometimes you never know where you're going to get that feeling of strength. And when I saw him, I'm not trying to take credit for it. I just did what I did. And many people have told me, because I've been so open about cancer, it's given them a lot of strength to deal with it. Also, the negative side is a lot of people have told me the last words that anybody's ever heard was them, them reading my blog to one of my best friends, and the last word that he or she will hear is, me signing off, and they look over there and they see that they've passed away. So even that's romantic to me. All of that stuff is thank you. It's thank you.
True connection. It's us all being the same.
Yeah. And it's also, so when you listen to the new Chic album, you see how celebratory it is. People go, well, no, you're sober. How could you talk about drinking?
Yeah.
I'm like going, well, I'm not a hypocrite. When I was drinking, I was having a good time. I sniffed glue at 11 years old. I dropped acid with Timothy Leary. I mean,
that's a trip right there, for real, right?
I was proud of that. I didn't know who he was at the time, so I wasn't proud of it at the time.
Did you give him the acid, or did he give you the acid?
No, he gave it to me. I didn't know what acid was. I didn't know what acid was. I didn't know who Timothy Leary was. I just wanted to hang out with these hippies. They wouldn't even call hippies, these freaks. I wanted to hang out with these freaks until the roller skating rinks, until the session started again, because we were in between sessions and we didn't want to waste our money.
You hear a lot about the late 60s and people talk about it in terms of the hippie culture, but you're like a late teen when the Summer of Love is happening. You're in New York. You're a Black Panther. You know, you have a very different experience from the 60s than what often gets talked about when people talk about music of the 60s. You saw a whole other thing.
Well, yeah, but I saw it all. That's what's cool about my life, that my sort of what we call, I like to just call it maturation, but everybody talks about it as radicalization. Big deal. I mean, my section of the Black Panther is, what do we do every day? We used to go to people's houses, paint, turn on the heat, start the breakfast program. We never held a gun in our lives.
But that's what the real Black Panthers. That's not. I mean, everything was the real, but that was an important part of the Black Panther.
That was the main part
that no one talked about.
It's funny. Everybody, people who don't know me, who meet me for the first time, they say, "I have a feeling that you were in the Panther Party." And I said, "Why do you say that?" Because Black Panthers always have a way of dealing with children and older people, the elderly and children. And you are so kind to kids. They always seem to like you. Like, you'll always see pictures of kids playing with my locks in the airport and things like that, or older people, me helping them, because that's the way I was socialized. So you don't go from finger painting to the Black Panther Party. It was a process. It was like, I was in the Cub Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the Boys Club of America, the Peace and Freedom Party, the Young Socialist Alliance, then the Black Panther Party. It was like, so I did all that hippie stuff. I was around when there was no such thing as Scientology, and then the next thing you know, there's somebody on the street going, "Hey man, you want to join the Church of Scientology, man?" or you're walking down the street, somebody's going, "Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Shosho Ho Nyoze, So Nyoze, Niki Nyoze, Ta Nyoze." Like they're doing that rap on you, and then somebody else is going, "Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare."
Well, youth at that time, if you think about it, childhood really in America started in the 50s, where you weren't working. Where kids had a bit more freedom. So the 60s, this is the generation that separates themselves, that has their own set of values. And all of that was expression.
Right.
It was them breaking the chains of whatever they were taught.
Yeah, but the thing that's cool about my life is that my family, my parents were heroin addicts. And they were into bebop and modern jazz.
No one has ever said the thing that was cool about my life is that my parents were heroin addicts.
Well, because they forced me to be independent. Not that they did it consciously. Right. It was because they were always in pursuit of drugs. So
did you harbor any resentment towards them at any stage of your life? No.
Oh, my parents are like amazing. I was saying to someone the other day, I was trying to think of one time in my whole life that my mom said, "Oh, sweetie, can you please come home when the lights go out? Or can you be home by 10 o'clock? Or can you be..." My mother never said that to me. I was 5, 6 years old. My mother knew that I was smart enough to come home when there was nothing to do.
I mean, that's crazy and amazing at the same time, right? We helicopter parents overwatching their parents, and here you are just strolling. Did you get lucky?
No, no. The people around us were cool.
Was it the neighborhood that was cool? They kept an eye on each other?
No, we lived in the ghetto. We lived where poor people lived. I mean, we lived where junkies lived. We lived where artists lived. The apartment that I lived in is the same apartment that Cliff Robertson lived in before he won the Academy Award for playing President Kennedy.
Right.
I mean, we lived that bohemian lifestyle where that's just how people were.
Where was that apartment?
This was, that particular apartment was on West 10th Street, 10th Street between, right off 10th and Bleecker. That was just a one-room type of loft apartment, very, very cheap. I don't even think our rent was $50 a month. I mean, dude, I lived on the subway. I lived in the streets. I was a panhandler. I lived in communes. I did the hippie thing to the 50th power. And then one amazing thing happened to me. Well, hundreds of amazing things happened to me. But one day I was on the street panhandling. I learned how to panhandle in a bunch of different languages, even sign language. And one day I was on the street panhandling, and this American heiress, who was also very left-wing thinking, she had done a film called Attica, and she was the heir to the Firestone tire fortune. And in her book, she writes, I met this kid named Nile Rodgers, and I let him, this is so cute, she said, I let him lay on my couch until he could stand on his feet.
Come on now.
So I moved into Park Avenue and 39th Street in the most gorgeous apartment.
Why you? Why do you think she picked you?
I have no idea. I have no idea. None whatsoever. We didn't have a sexual relationship. It was nothing of the sort. We were just friends.
And how old were you?
Maybe 17, right. 16, 17. And at that time, I was extremely driven. I just wanted to be the best musician possible, and from there I went on to join Sesame Street.
That's where you met Bernard?
I met Bernard while I was at Sesame Street, but Bernard did not play with Sesame Street. Luther Vandross played with Sesame Street and Fonzie Thornton, but not Bernard. And also Carlos Alomar's wife, Robin Clark, who was one of the Young Americans who sang the first Chic records.
Right.
So and we've been friends all our lives. I mean, it's never changed. We all play on each other's records.
So when you're panhandling and that's your life or living on a subway, where are you playing music? Where are your instruments? How are you doing this?
Everywhere. When I finally started panhandling, I had already switched to the guitar. Yeah. Prior to playing guitar, I was playing. Directly before that, I was playing clarinet, which was also another blessing in disguise. My whole life has been a series of wonderful blessings that I call hippie happenstance, because I started out playing classical music, playing the flute, and because my parents were heroin addicts, we never stayed in the same neighborhood very long because either they didn't pay rent and got kicked or whatever, but because of the standardized educational system in America at the time, every time I went to a new school, we were basically doing the same thing. So I was never like the stupid kid in the class. I was never behind anyone. Right. As a matter of fact, I typically was ahead because when I was born quite sickly, and I was brought up for a few months in a convalescent home, which had a one-room classroom. So the range of kids went from about 5.5 and 6 to about 13 or 14. So the first 2 books I ever learned to read, and I was only 6 years old, were Treasure Island and Moby Dick. Try and read Moby Dick now, bro.
No. Even at 6 it's something. You know?
So when I went to school, and I went to Catholic school, the nuns kept telling my mother I was touched by the hand of God because I could read Melville at 6.5 years old. And all my mom kept saying was, no, he went to school. But they couldn't believe that I could absorb that much.
Right.
But because I was the odd man out, all I did was absorb. There was nothing else for me to do because I was this little kid and everybody else was big and they sounded like they had basso profundo voices and, like, whoa.
So then every room you've been in when you were coming up, it's just you're comfortable because you've moved around so much. You're used to being...
I'm learning.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is learning.
And being new.
And I'm like, it's funny, now we talk about artificial intelligence and we talk about learning computers. That's what I was.
Yeah.
I was just this thing, just absorbing. And if somebody said a polysyllabic word that I didn't understand, I would ask them to explain it to me. And then I go up and look up the etiology, or the etymology rather, myself. I get my mologies mixed up. Am I talking about insects or words?
It all works. We were talking about Miles earlier. Today is when this airs, the birthday of Ray Charles, but also John Coltrane, right? Coltrane had his own thing too. Did you ever? I'm sure you were connected, right? Look at that, you're spinning around.
So, Coltrane.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if I'm being premature, but this is what they told me. So I've just been, I don't even know if they call it inducted. We'll just say added to the Smithsonian Institute and the, wow, all this heavy stuff. The Library of Congress, and they told me that they've picked out a place for my guitar between John Coltrane's horn and Duke Ellington's piano. And I'm like going, are you kidding? You gotta be kidding me.
That classic Strat you've played forever?
Yeah.
Wow. But don't give it to him too soon.
No, dude, when I die.
Yeah, that's it.
Coltrane didn't give him the horn before he died.
Were you a Coltrane? Obviously, you're a Coltrane fan, right?
The biggest.
Yeah.
Oh, it's insane. We at rehearsal, I mean, you can turn on, YouTube and see us, whatever, playing giant steps and I'm a Coltrane fanatic.
Right.
Fanatic. Because mainly, not only was I a Coltrane fanatic, but I'm a McCoy Tyner fanatic. So my style of guitar playing, believe it or not, if you listen to a song like I Want Your Love, that's me playing as McCoy Tyner-ish as I can on guitar. Right. When I'm doing the composing, when when I actually play the record, it's different. But when I'm composing, it's dong, dong, boom, gong, gong, just a bunch of fourths. Dong, dong, gong, I want your love. Gong, 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 your love. Gang, gang, gong. So
that's those records.
Yeah, man, that's
the Get Lucky stuff.
Yeah.
Suddenly that becomes the record of the year. When that dropped, everybody was like, what? And Daft Punk's always been good at...
They're great.
Just coming ahead of the curve, right?
Yeah.
And nailing it.
Yeah.
What was that for you, like hearing that everywhere?
That was almost the weirdest thing ever because we thought Lose Yourself to Dance was going to be the bomb. That's the one we made the long form video. And
you did 3 tracks, right? On that one, is it 3 tracks?
Yeah. Give Life Back to Music, Lose Yourself to Dance, and Get Lucky. And we just couldn't believe how Get Lucky blew up. Yeah. And a lot of it, once again, man, it goes back to hippie happenstance because here's what happened. A lot of these fake Daft Punk records were coming out. And they'd actually have labels on them that would say Daft Punk, or they would have labels that didn't say Daft Punk, but because people were so into the mystery of Daft Punk, just like with our band, the Chic Mystique. It was like we were doing everything to be anonymous and trick everybody because we didn't feel like we were stars. So we had to create stories. And so what happened was they wanted to come out on vinyl as well as every format at the same time. So they sent a box of records to a store that in order for them to release the records on Tuesday, which was the time that you released the records in those days, he'd have to get it before Tuesday so he could put it in the store and the whole bit. But he just couldn't help himself. So this one dude, I don't even remember what country it was in, but this one dude said, I think this looks like the real thing. I mean, it's like, it's high quality and it's got everybody's names on it. And so he opens it up and he starts playing it. And the next thing you know, everybody starts going to this dude's site where he's got the music up online. And I get this emergency call from Daft Punk, and we have to have this meeting because they're like flipping out because they had a whole plan, and their plan was very much an analog plan. They said, Nile, we want to pretend as if the internet didn't exist. So they wanted to do print ad, and they wanted to rap trucks like rappers in the old days. They wanted to do all this stuff. And it was like, now all of a sudden this one dude is playing it, and everybody's going to his site listening to the Daft Punk record. So I'll never forget this, man, till the day I die. So we had lunch in Santa Monica, and on what's that street, Albert Kinney or something like that.
Albert Kinney.
Yeah, we had lunch there, and I said, well, guys, you know what you got to do? Let everybody have it. There's no other choice, because right now they're not even really talking about Daft Punk or the music. They're sort of talking about this dude. So if everybody has it, then we can bring the focus back to the music, which is what you really want to bring the focus to, which is why you did all those films to the collaborators to bring the focus to the music, because you wanted people to really listen to your album. So let's let them hear your album. Now that you've done the collaborators, let them hear the album. And they went, wow, that's a cool idea. Poof. That's what they did. They let everybody hear it for a week or two.
Amazing. Before we let you go, so now you got to run. I have to ask a couple things. Why are songs in different keys? How do you know what key a song is supposed to be in?
Well, typically it's because of the singers.
That's what it is, right? Range? Otherwise, would it all be in one key?
Not necessarily, no. Because some things are being played in a certain key. Like I'm working on a new Emily Sandé record, and I'm a jazz guitar player who doesn't believe in using a capo or anything like that. That's just not me. So if I can't play it, without any capo, it ain't going to be played by me, period. I'll figure out some other lick that works. So we did this song that I do in E with her because of the riff. And she's killing on it. It just sounded right. So we just lucked up on the right key, and then she's smoking. But let's take a song like Material Girl by Madonna. She did that in F sharp, which puts her in the mezzo-soprano range when she goes, no, not the Material Girl. I was like a virgin in F sharp. Wow, because she's got to go, hey. I was like going, are you kidding me?
You were trying to bring it down?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Because, see, people, this is the genius of Madonna. She knew that there was something appealing about a youthful sounding vocal. Now, I, as a music lover, I love Madonna's voice when she sings a song like Live to Tell. I cry when I hear her sing that. To me, that's her natural range. So the fact that she forced herself to sing like that, like, some boys have me, some boys have me, I think that. But there's a song on the album where she uses the technique where she sings down an octave and goes up an octave. And I'm like going, whoa, that's so clever.
That's it.
But the keys were all over the place, and I had to make them work because she was not going to change anything. Right. She had learned it like that, and that's all there was to it. So it was now up to me to accept the fact that my artist wanted to do this and to make the best record I could with her.
Absolutely.
Period. End of story.
B major 7. Miles said that's the chord that always makes him happy. Do you have a chord?
No.
No. Anything?
No.
Anybody call you Pud anymore?
Yeah,
Yeah?
yeah. All my friends call me Pud, who are really close to me.
But Sinatra called you Pud.
Yeah, Sinatra called me Pud. Everybody called me Pud when I was, 14 years old, basically. Anybody who was around my family called me Pud.
So to me, the idea that Sinatra and you would converse on a tarmac of an airplane, and when you were a young person, you crossed paths with Jimi Hendrix as well, right?
Yeah, all the time. I saw Hendrix damn near every day for a while.
What did Hendrix mean to you?
Hendrix, in a weird way, was almost like a god,
Yeah.
because he was in our circles. He was cool, but you got to remember, in our circles, everybody was cool. Mm-hmm. So he didn't stand out as the exceptional cool dude. He didn't stand out more than Monk. Mm-hmm. He didn't stand out more than Nina Simone. He was the hippie guy. So he felt like the older version of us.
Right.
Whereas everybody else that I had related to, I had to try and sort of emulate them. Whereas Hendrix was like our pack leader in a way.
Right.
His best friend was a guy named Velvet Turner, and Velvet and I, we were all buddies. So when Velvet would bring Jimmy around, man,
That's pretty good.
yeah, and like Velvet did everything. He would only wear Hendrix's clothes, even though Velvet was a little bigger than Jimmy.
Yeah.
He would like stuff himself into Jimmy's clothes, and he was like, "Hey, Nile, you want a Blimpie number 11, man?" And I was like, "Yo, Velvet," But we dug it. I mean, we liked the fact that Jimmy liked us. I mean, I could name drop all day long, because when you live in the village, you were around all those people. I saw the Fugs and the Mothers of Invention and Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Isaac Hayes and Thelonious Monk and Bob Dylan and Joan Baez and Richie Havens. Man, I remember the first day I met Richie Havens, I was like, I started crying.
His Just Like a Woman is killer. Oh. But the whole opening of Woodstock, like Richie Havens is a proper boss.
See, dude, when I heard the song Handsome Johnny, and my stepfather was wounded in the Korean War, every time I used to listen to that song, it would bring tears to my eyes, because, even though I was a fighter, learned martial arts at a very young age, I was a real pacifist. I did not believe in war. I just didn't. And when I would listen to those lyrics, and he would go, "Hey, look yonder, tell me what's that you see, marching through the fields of Gettysburg. Looks like Handsome Johnny." I was like, I would imagine my stepfather marching through the fields of Korea and getting wounded. Like the first day was, running over a bomb and shrapnel in his eyes, and going, man, this is the most beatnik pacifist dude in the world. And now he's out there fighting war because he can't fight the system. As intelligent as my stepfather is Jewish, and he was a mathematical genius, but they didn't have the smarts that us hippies had, because we were now starting to deal with technology, and we were able to beat the system through technology. Right. We were able to manufacture draft cards and things like that, where they
had to go along.
So I mean, they took my father to the Brooklyn Navy Yards in handcuffs.
What? That's horrible.
Yeah.
But that's what it was.
That was life, man. And it's funny, out of all the weird things that have happened to me, the good, the bad, the ugly, I would not change 1 minute of my life. The amount of tears that I've shed, the amount of friends that I've lost, has just given me a new zest for life. And last night, I think my crew saw me the most upset they've ever seen me because we did a concert, right? And it was high tide and it was raining and the damn ferry got stuck and we were freezing because we've been, for the last couple of weeks, we've been in 92-degree weather, 95-degree weather. So we come home to New York and it's freezing and I'm like way underdressed. I don't have any clothes. I've already packed my clothes to send them off to Europe. I have nothing. I'm dying and I'm just like, but the concert on stage, playing in front of those people, made me so happy. And then at the end, when they were all getting off the boat and showing the love and saying, yo, we saw you at Coachella. It was like, you know, that's what it's all about.
Totally.
You know.
Thanks, man. What a pleasure.
Thank you, bro.
Appreciate your time. Good to talk to you all day. I know you guys got to run. We appreciate it. So you live in New York? Are you still in New York?
Oh, yeah.
I'm at East Village.
Oh, no kidding.
First and 11th, yeah.
Dude, I'm from St. Mark's Place. You know, when we were poor.